Hey BookTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me and this is the first time you're seeing my face, hello, what's up? My name's Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So I hope that's why you're here, because that's what's gonna be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in. The continued support, I really do appreciate it. So today for you, I have a weekly wrap up. This is week 42 and all my reading shenanigans in between. Week 42 was October 13th through October 19th, so it's going to be a little bit late, but better late than never, right guys? So if you'd like to know what was encompassing my week, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talking some books. Okay, so in week 42, I only completed one book, but it was a doozy. It was a doozy. It was this bad boy, Dark Things I Adore by Katie Letteri. This has been on my radar for quite a while, and it gave me exactly what I was looking for. It met my expectations, surpassed in some, failed in others, but you know, that's how it goes. So let's just dive right into it and start talking about it. So Dark Things I Adore by Katie Letteri. This is a mystery thriller with a murder component. We have triggers for suicide, depression, bipolar, self-harm, and domestic abuse. So a lot of heavy-hitting triggers in this. It was a little bit, there's some areas where it's kind of difficult to get through, which is one reason why it took me as long as it did, because it was just like, whoa. Whoa. Was not expecting that at all. But it was definitely a fun ride. Quick summary about it. It was told in multiple time frames. So we have a past time frame and a present time frame. And then as their stories are progressing, they're coalescing, and then they become like a main focused storyline where we figure out, the big twist and everything like that. So I really enjoyed that concept of it. I thought it was great. The past storyline, we follow some friends that meet up like an art retreat getaway, like an artist camp for adults. These are all adults, and they're at this artist kind of colony, and they're just discovering their muse in the woods and things of that nature. And there's one member of this group named Coral. Coral is not her real name. They all have kind of like special forestry, woodsy names. They have a camp name, essentially, what they have. And Coral is her camp name. She is not a resident of the camp or commune. She actually works it. And she starts working there, and she has some serious mental issues. Very severe depression with bipolar episodes. But she befriends the core group that we're following, and her darkness becomes an obsession for one of them. He sees her as a muse to end all muses. He finds beauty in the dark. He definitely adores the dark. When she's crying, when she's hurt, when she's upset, when she's in her manic episodes, this is when he finds her the most beautiful, and he wants to paint her. He wants to draw her. He wants to remember her in that way because he finds it the most intriguing, the most compelling, the most moving. Now, our present day storyline, we follow a teacher and a student who head off to her home to review her portfolio thesis. Now, her home happens to be really close to where this camp was. So here's where we start to tie our stuff in together. However, both people, the student and the teacher, they're setting the stage for something to go down, but we don't really know whose is what. I think one wants to bang them and the other one wants to kill them. But it could be both. We don't know. The way the verbiage, the way the author wrote the story is you're really kind of thrown. We don't know if this is going to be a dark romance, this is going to be a romance, this is going to be a murder. We have no fucking idea because of the way she's telling both stories in this present day timeline. Once we've got the base components of both timelines, we start seeing a lot of connections revealed back and forth through the remnants and disturbed minds of these characters. And if I gave you any more info on that, I would give you away the story. So just understand that this is a 2-timeline story, past and present, and then they converge and they explode. And secrets are revealed. Connections are revealed. Intrigue. Layers. This is an onion book. Layers and layers of stuff. It was fun to dissect this one. This was a fun time. So what worked in this? The format of the story. I love past present stories, especially when they're done as well as this one. This was awesome. Okay, there was just enough of each timeline, and it's told back and forth, back and forth. It's not like, here's the past, and then the whole past component, here's the whole present component. It is told back and forth, kind of like a dual point of view, but a dual point of time. It's a pot story. Is that a word? I don't actually know if that's a word or not for that. Anyway, moving on. Squirrel moments, guys, squirrel moments. I really enjoyed how she was doing it because she gave me just enough in each timeline that I didn't know exactly how it connected, but I knew there was a connection. I found myself a lot of times in the story stopping and trying to see the connections because I knew they were there and I wanted to find them. This was a puzzle lover's book. I had a very, very good time trying to put this puzzle together, and I sometimes did, sometimes I didn't. And I really enjoyed that I got some wins and I got some losses. I always enjoy a book that can keep me on my toes. Very much had a good time with that. There also is another unique element to the story and the formatting. So in the present day time, we are going over an art piece portfolio for like a master's thesis or a doctorate. It's never really described, but it's a portfolio of art pieces. And the way that our story does this is she actually has it in thesis form. And so she's describing the number of piece, the title, what medium it was used to create, and then a brief description of what it is. And then there's these little notes throughout the entire book that actually that help really tie in both the past and the present. And they're including these art pieces. And that's where you really get to see those connective factors. But you don't actually see them because you actually have to see the whole art presentation together. So you have to remember these art pieces, but some of these art pieces sounded beautiful. I definitely would love I feel like Brahm, he actually does artwork in his books. And I feel like this book would have really benefited from that, for actually seeing the piece in its entirety and actually seeing it. I think that would have been excellent. I think that would have been a really cool feature to add in this book. The fact that it wasn't there is depressing, but you know what? What I got, I really had a good time with those art pieces. They were vivid. I could see them, but I wanted to physically, I wanted to actually see them. I didn't want to just imagine them. I wanted to actually see the dark beauty that our author had created with her characters and her artistry. I thought it was really, really cool. Those pieces really, like I said, that's where you really see the connections. Like, they are the webbing of this giant collection of this story. If you really break it down and you take these art pieces, you have a spider web, okay? You have a spider web. You have the spider, which is the past, and you have the fly, which is the present. And this webbing are these art pieces, and this is what draws in the fly to you, and it kind of comes, and you have the struggle back and forth, but eventually they all coalesce, and then they can join as one major thing. And it was really, really cool. Not to put too philosophical point on it, that was a little deep for that, but you know, that's how I go. Okay, that's just how my brain works, guys. It's just how it works. Ow, sorry. I pulled a muscle in my leg, and so I'm moving it, and it really fucking hurts. It really fucking hurts. Ow. So if I look like I'm in pain, I am. But those were all, the formatting of the story really helped strengthen the story. I thought it was great. I wouldn't have changed any things, that maybe added the pictures of the paintings. That's the only thing extra I would have done. Another thing that really worked in this book was the deception of the author. This author tricked me to no end. It wasn't like, I'm gonna blatantly lie to you. She gave me just enough that I felt like I was gonna read a dark romance, and then it turns into something else. But then it goes back. Like, it was back and forth, back and forth. I never knew exactly where to land. Is this a murder mystery? Is this a dark romance? Is it a combo of it? Like, what the fuck is it? The conclusions were endless. It was awesome the way she used this. The deception of it was fantastic. She incorporated not only deceiving me as the reader, but she deceived the characters in kind of the same way. What you see is not always what you get. And I really enjoyed that. That was really fun. It felt like I was part of the story, which is exactly what I felt like this story was going to do for me. When I bought this book, I felt like I was going to get that vibe of Are You Afraid of the Dark? And I got that. Now, that show, if you're not familiar with it, it was a show back on Nickelodeon back in the 90s where a group of kids went into the forest and they told ghost stories around a campfire, okay? I love that show. I grew up on that show. And this book gave me that vibe when I picked it up. And it just kept giving and giving and giving. Because the cool thing about that show is there was always a twist with those stories. Now, it was a child show, so it wasn't super dark and super intimidating, but it was always a twist within the twist, and this book did that for me. So the fact that I thought I was getting one thing, and I was given another thing, but then I thought I was giving back the other thing, oh my God, I loved it. This author fucking nailed it. Nailed that. Nailed that vibe, nailed it. Perfect read for this fall spooky season. Like, definitely 2 thumbs way up for that. I love the description the author used. There's a lot of descriptive qualities in this story, not only just the paintings and the portfolio, but the nature around. We are in like kind of a wooded camp area, and we get a very clear description of what this place looks like, and I wanted to fucking go. I wanted to go. Okay, we are in Maine in the fall. Everything is starting to slowly die. The changing of the leaves is happening. It just set the ambiance of this story tenfold. I fucking loved it. I got lost in the story. There were times where I was sitting there and I would reread the same page because the way this woman wrote the description of this forest, of the lighting, of the lake, I was just like, oh my God, this is the perfect intro to like a horror film, classic slasher film, but it wasn't. It had that thrill, mind fuck quality of the new like early 2000, of the later 2000 horror films. Oh, it had like all of the shit, and it was fantastic. I had such a great fucking time with this one. Such a great time. And the paintings, the descriptions, as I said, I really wish I could have seen those. If I could change one thing about this book, I would have included pictures of those paintings. I really feel like it would have just strengthened everything. But the cool thing is that we don't have those, so I can still kind of imagine and see with my own mind's eye based off of her description, but I have a pretty good idea what it fucking looked like. And that is definitely an art show that I would definitely go see, for sure. So, hands down, awesome. Loved it. For as much as I enjoyed this book, there was some parts of it that didn't work. So, you know, it's just my thing. We gotta talk about it. There is a big twist ending, okay? There is a huge twist ending, and I called it. I saw it very early. I guessed it very early. But the thing is, I was happy that I was right. I wasn't annoyed that I was right. That's the difference I want to make, is sometimes when you guess the twist ending, if an author does the story well enough, you are super fucking stoked that you got it right. You're like, yes, you threw me on all these different fucking paths, but I fucking nailed it and I got it right. I was happy. I was happy that was the twist. It wasn't ruined for me because the way it was delivered to me was spot on perfect. But I did guess it fairly about 35% of the way into the book. When I started seeing the connections and one major event happened, that's when I saw it. And that could be strictly because I have kind of a horror film background. I grew up watching Are You Afraid of the Dark, Twilight Zone, very reminiscent of Twilight Zone episodes. M. Night Shyamalan's one of my favorite directors, so, you know, his twists are fucking stellar. You know, like, when you've grown up and you've encountered all of these types of materials, sometimes the twist endings, no matter how good they are, no matter how delivered they are, you will still get them. But I was not annoyed. I was not pissed off. I didn't feel like I wasted my time with this book after finding out that I'd already guessed the ending. I did not feel like that, which was fucking awesome. So I definitely want to point that out, that yes, I did get it early on, so that didn't work. She wasn't able to completely hide it, but when I was confirmed that I was right, I was not annoyed by it because the way she did it was excellent. I think she did a really good job with that. There was a lot of similarities, especially with the twist ending. And if you've seen this film, it's going to give it away, so I apologize. But if you've not seen this film, don't watch this film until you read this book. So there is a Jay Moore film called Cherry Falls that I saw back in high school. Okay, and it was one of my favorite B-roll horror films for a long time. I just had a great time with that movie. I rented it one Friday night from a family video, when you could still rent videos from a video store. Yeah, I'm dating myself here, guys. Holy shit. Remember the days? Yeah. Anyway, I picked that movie up, watched it. This was the first time that this twist ending I had ever really like, what? Shut up. Like, no, I did not see that. And I was a big Jay Moore fan. I've always loved him. I think he can do dark comedy really fucking well. Like that is a niche for him, and I don't see him in enough films. Anyway, sidebar. This book was very reminiscent of that base plot. Not an original concept base plot, but when I was reading this book, I felt that Cherry Falls vibe. I kept feeling it, and that's kind of what lent me to guess it, because that was the ending of that movie. So there was a lot of reminiscence to it. So if you've seen that film, you're going to get that vibe. So the fact that there was something, and it was so strong, it was a very strong connection, that I have to kind of ding it a little bit, because that thing came out in like the early 2000s, I think. And this thing was released a couple years ago. So yeah, it was just very reminiscent of it. But that's not necessarily always a bad thing, because I really enjoyed that movie. And after I read this book, I was like, I need to go find this movie. And I watched it, and I remembered loving this movie. It doesn't age well. So, you know, it doesn't age well, but it's still really good. Still really good. As for a spice rating, there is no spice in this book. There is illusion to a lot of it. But there's no actual like wham bam thank you ma'am. There are results of wham bam thank you ma'am. There is ties to wham bam thank you ma'am. But there's no actual like we see it. There's no fade to black, nothing like that. So there is no spice rating. This is a mystery thriller. Even though if you are a dark romance reader, you're gonna read this book and be like, where's my smut, motherfucker? Because it should have been there. Yeah, I guess there's two things I would have changed. I would have put Elisa Sexy in this book, because that would have been dope. Artists in an artist colony in the dark with guys who are obsessed with darkness and what most people consider flaws, and they find beauty in it. Missed opportunity. Missed opportunity that would have been dope as fuck. Dope as fuck. But all in all, I gave this thing 4.5 stars. I had a great time with the story. I'm so glad that I read this when I did. This is a perfect example of a book that received at the right fucking time. This book, I do not recommend reading in the spring, in the winter. This is a fall spooky read right around a campfire, right on a couch curled up with blankets and some hot chocolate with some spooky music playing in the background. Absolutely full moon. This is an ambiance kind of book. There's a certain setting you need to read for this book, and if you don't, you will miss everything that's awesome about this book. I had a great fucking time, and if you want a nice spooky fall vibing book and you can handle some dark twisted mind thriller kind of stuff, you need to pick this one up, because this one you won't regret. Had a great fucking time with this one, and I'm very, very glad that I finally read it, because I've been waiting on this one for a while. This was exactly what I needed. So 4 to 5 stars. Definitely recommend it. Okay, so that's the only book I completed in week 42, but I did happen to start another book, an audiobook, and it is Adam by Jacqueline Frank. So I continued working on this bad boy. This is the 6th installment to the Nightwalker series that I started last year. I did the Nightwalker readathon with Becky and Kalani, and we did some live shows, but I never got to this one. So I was like, you know what? It's spooky season. It's paranormal. Let's just finish this fucker up. Let's finish it up. So I started working on it during week 42. Yeah, week 42. And I did it on an audiobook. So I will have more to talk about it in week 43, because that's actually when I finished it. But I did start it while reading this one, because I'm sorry, I was just obsessed. I was obsessed with this one. Nothing else was going to entertain me, except that all I wanted to do was sit down and read this book. And it was just, this thing. I cannot talk enough about this. This was awesome. I had a great fucking time with this. Great time. So, yeah. But that's what I read in week 42, and I will see you guys all soon with another video. Stay spooky.